who is someone who's been very hypercritical of content creators not being outspoken enough in Infinity Nikki. They're also someone who plays quite a bit of Genshin Impact. And they're saying, is Genshin still worth it? Some would say no, but I still enjoy it. Let's talk about why. I like to take Saru's opinion kind of at face value. I think Saru's been pretty straightforward, straight shooter. And I am curious why they think Genshin's still in a good spot. I'm always down to listen to it, so I'll say a Genshin anti still thinks the game's worth it. So let's see it.
And still play Genshin Impact? I get asked this question a lot, most often by people who used to play but eventually dropped it. Many of the game's most vocal critics enjoyed it at first and loved it for its sheer potential, but slowly became disillusioned by the issues they felt held it back and a lack of improvement over time. Regardless of
which I think is incredibly fair. If you feel like you're not having fun playing a video game, if you like the developers don't give a fuck about you, you have every right to quit the game. I'm sure we'd all agree.
How you feel about Genshin, if you step back from the rampant tribalism, a lot of the criticism is valid. But while I understand where they're coming from, I still genuinely enjoy playing, and I'd argue that the part of the game I care about the most has improved over time, and the problems with others are often overstated.
Let's hear it.
There are so many different things that draw people to games in general, and Genshin at least attempts to include many of them, to varying degrees of success. While most players will have at least some interest in most of the aspects of the game, otherwise they would just play something else in the first place, it's easy to get so hyper-focused on the parts that you enjoy the most that it's hard to comprehend someone else's perspective.
No, it's actually very easy to understand someone else's perspective. The problem is that when you disagree with someone else's perspective, they take that as that's impossible for you to do and you're stupid. It's just my opinion. Well, unfortunately, opinions can be wrong. And if someone says that they really enjoy fucking sheep, I'm still going to call them a dirty sheep fucker and I'm going to call them retarded. It's really that easy. The problem with Genshin Impact is it's become less of a game and more of a chore. And all of the fun parts are kind of just watered down versions of how they used to be. So many quality of life features are pay-gated behind new characters, as well as constellations of newer characters, as well as it's pretty much just a story game at this point. But the story is being told by a toddler, and I just don't really understand. If you're a grown-ass adult, how are you enjoying the Mickey Mouse storytelling patterns of Paimon?
Goes for all games, of course. A while back, I posted a video exploring my experience with Wuthering Waves version 2 as a returning player, and certain people got very angry. They have very different preferences to mine, and when I explained what I didn't like about the game before version 2, they jumped to the conclusion that it was made in bad faith, even though my main point was to highlight the ways the game improved those things. This video is going to focus on the aspects of Genshin that I care about, and how they fare in the current state of the game. I'll briefly touch on the other most important parts too, but if you disagree on any of these, just remember, I'm not saying you're wrong to feel that way. If you're looking for a balanced rundown of the pros and cons of the game...
Now, I'm going to say this. I do respect Saru's opinions, but I'm going to be heavily critical on this video. So just bear with me. I am going to say that their opinion is wrong if it is wrong. So let's just keep going here.
This video is not it. This is a focus on what parts I like in the hopes of answering that recurring question. This video is also not going to cover the pros and cons of gachas in general. If you're curious about my take on that, I covered that in depth in a recent video, or Genshin's monetization or lack of generosity in particular. And maybe, by hearing where I'm coming from, you might see the game in a different light. By far, the main appeal of the game for me has always been its exploration. And this is that one area where I'd argue they have improved over time. Yes?
You say improved, I say pay-gated. Let's keep going here. I think this is already off to a very shaky start.
I did just say improved. A lot of people would strongly disagree and feel that the game has fallen far behind the competition. Depending on what you're looking to get from exploration, that can subjectively be true. For me, there's pros and cons to each. What I would consider to be the core gameplay loop of exploration game is very simple at heart. First, you see something interesting in the world, you make your way over to it and interact with it in some way. Once that interaction is done, there should be something else interesting nearby to entice you to continue. There are at least 4 aspects to this fundamental gameplay loop that exploration games can adjust in order to create different flavors of exploration: distribution, traversal, rewards, and chaining. The pacing of exploration gameplay is controlled by how the points of interest are distributed. If they're spaced out, with either large areas or difficult terrain to traverse between them, then you spend more time moving through the world to reach each one. To compensate for this, the reward you get at the end is usually more significant. The loop can be much faster if they're crammed close together. In some cases, it can take just a few seconds to get from one point of interest to another. When a game does this, they generally keep the rewards for completing each loop much smaller. Right from the start, Genshin had a diverse mix when it comes to distribution. It leans more towards cramming the world full of shorter loops than many other exploration games I've enjoyed in the past, but it does still include a healthy amount which require much more effort to unlock. I really enjoyed that diversity and got hooked on this particular gameplay loop. Combat can be fun as well, but given the choice between the two, I'd always pick exploration.
So, I agree with what they're saying here. However, I don't think they're fully tackling everything that encompasses into exploration. And I think characters like Malvika, who massively improve the quality of life of exploration in the game, it should be acknowledged how that is not healthy for the game. However, I can agree. They do have the from chest to chest to chest for sure. I mean, I've seen people streams of this shit. They still do a pretty good job of doing that. Yeah, but I think it's few and far between on your experience as a player on how much you're going to enjoy that based on what characters you pull. And me personally, I consider that bad game design.
Traversal is where people have the biggest disagreements. A large portion of the exploration gameplay loop is essentially move from point A to point B. Games handle this very differently, ranging from those which provide as much freedom as possible to those with a heavy focus on gamifying every tiny moment along the way. While many feel that removal of friction is always a good thing for any exploration game, I would disagree. While traversal freedom feels good and means you can get to the reward part of the loop more smoothly, it flattens out that distribution aspect. This is a hard line for a game to walk. Too little freedom risks player frustration and can lead to a very painful experience where moving around the world feels restrictive and annoying, while too much risks turning exploration into a bland checkbox ticking exercise with no real gameplay loop.
I think that's also a very fair take. Games like World of Warcraft, from vanilla to Burning Crusade to Wrath of the Lich King, World of Warcraft felt very full. It felt very, very, very full because you had to travel on the ground. You got your 60% speed mount, you got your 100% speed mount, and it felt good once you got that. But then once you got flying, the world became incredibly small. However, they did that by design because the world was becoming so fucking large. I understand Saru's point here, but the game is far too large to be pay-gating the premier way of traversal in this video game. And that's why I would disagree with this take.
Some players do prefer as much freedom as possible, especially if they see the exploration as a chore they need to complete in order to gain gacha currency. And fortunately, in games which lean more towards freedom, there are other ways to make it still feel like you're exploring, for example, by providing a very freeing traversal method which has satisfying moment-to-moment gameplay of its own.
It does. And also, we got to remember that, like, still climbing up the walls and not having infinite stamina and not being able to sprint up walls, it just feels very dated and 2020, to be honest. And we're in big 2025. They could remove the stamina bar and make you sprint up walls, and it would just infinitely make the game better.
Or just by making the world just so...
You can be content with these things, but you can't say that they're good, right? You can't say that they're the best they could be.
Beautiful that you can't help but enjoy running around it for no reason. Personally, I'm here for that feeling of exploration. It's important to me that regardless of where the game lands on the spectrum between freedom and friction, the time spent going from A to B feels like a game. Genshin starts off weighted a little towards the higher friction part of the spectrum, which provides a sense of scale to the environment. The harsh limit to climbing stamina early on, coupled with Mondstadt's looming cliffs and wide open plains, made the world feel huge. It was satisfying in the early game to slowly improve your ability to traverse the world, though there's no excuse for us to not be able to run around without stamina limits outside of battle. I really wish...
A lot of people can say huge. I would just say frustrating. I immediately sprinted from waypoint to waypoint because climbing up the mountains felt like a fucking chore, and it was miserable if you just got barely to the top and then you fall all the way back down and you lose like another 2 minutes of time. Like, oh my God, when Kazuha came out, it like saved the fucking game for me. But imagining people traversing the game without like a Venti or a Kazuha or like a fucking Mona or a Yelan, you know what I mean? It's like, oh Jesus, it's just sluggish. It really is just sluggish, and I would encourage anybody who thinks the exploration in this game is good, try traversing the entire world on a new account where you don't have one of the quality of life characters to make it better. It feels fucking bad, guys. Like, especially if you've already played Wuthering Waves, like the premier exploration game. That's why I play WoW. I love exploring new areas. It's a lot of fun. It feels so bad in Genshin. It's insane.
They had leaned into that more. It would have been amazing to slowly unlock more traversal freedom via an exploration leveling system which progressed much further than the bare-bones stamina increases which the game came out with, as long as they didn't move too far towards making it too frictionless. This would have helped satisfy a wider range of players, though it would have required a lot of care on the part of the devs to make sure the exploration still felt meaningful. Instead, over time, the biggest changes they made to traversal were the new mechanics added to the world itself. These mechanics aimed to move the dial more towards freedom in a slightly different way, and they improved a ton with each new region. The zip lines are the perfect example. Mondstadt and Liyue had none, Inazuma's were janky as hell, then Sumeru and Fontaine's were smooth to use but a bit restrictive. The ones in Chenyu Vale were absolute peak, providing a fantastic balance between freedom and friction, and designed in a way which lets the developers subtly guide the players towards points of interest.
The problem is that this is obviously admission of bad design, where they have to put these into the game to streamline it. I think it's good because they did fuck up with the early traversal. But the problem is that they updated these areas for Natlan to feel good with these new mechanics, but they needed to retroactively put these same systems for previous areas that also have the same level of frustration when you have to explore them. because they admit, oh yeah, these feel really fucking bad. But when you only update what's new and you never update what's old, well, people still have to go through what's old and it feels like a fucking punishment.
Notland is conspicuously missing from that list. We'll get to it shortly. This added a little more freedom without destroying the diversity of distribution, and overall I enjoyed the exploration more and more. Chenyu Vale was amongst my favorite areas to explore across any open world game. This placement of each point of interest in that region was carefully tailored so that wherever you wanted to go, there was usually a traversal method which would take you there in a way which felt fun and engaging, and I
Keyword usually, which is insane. I will admit though, this area is very pretty. It's very, very, very pretty.
loved every minute. The big downside to this region-specific approach is that the improvements have never been ported back into previous regions. I think that's short-sighted. Nobody would complain if Hoyo strategically added something like those spirit carps to Mondstadt and Liyue, for example.
This makes me very happy how Saru and I are pretty much explaining the exact same points here. This feels very good. Yeah, this makes me feel like I'm in agreement here.
And they could even introduce them to us in a special exploration event which revisits those older regions. While many players focus on exploration quality,
This video is giving me, I accept Genshin for all of its flaws. I'm just not that type of player. I'm really not. If a game is that fucked up, I'm just not gonna bother.
of life, what I'm looking for is exploration where you don't want to skim past most of the world because there's something interesting to interact around every corner. Overall, if we compare the early regions to the absolute best the game has to offer, their changes in approach did a great job at making traversal more free while leaving the feeling of exploration intact. The rewards too can be diverse. Gacha-minded players will hear rewards and instantly assume that this could only mean gacha currency or maybe some useful equipment. However, there's a whole lot more that games can offer which I'd consider exploration rewards, and those of us who are here for the exploration first are often self-motivated too.
I think every single new update, they need to put in a new pet that comes from one of the chests, as well as maybe a good 4-star weapon, or like 6 really good new 4-star weapons in the chest, and even maybe an unlockable free-to-play cosmetic. I think that would greatly increase everybody's drive to want to go explore things immediately. But right now, if I'm just going like, if I'm spending 20 minutes to get 5 Primo Gems, I'm sorry, bro. I'd rather spend $1 and get 100 times more than that.
Other rewards are usually either collectibles or some non-exploration gameplay, puzzles, challenges, battles, and so on, but they can also be lore fragments or story beats as well. In Genshin, these are rarely challenging.
They won't do any of this knowing them. Yeah, that's kind of the point, right?
So anyone looking for a more hardcore gaming experience on any level may find themselves wishing for something different, but the game provides enough variety to keep many who want a more relaxing experience engaged. And with things like the local legends, they also began to add a little more challenge on occasion. And self-motivation? I've lost track of how many times I've talked to someone who started the game for the first time and set out to explore the shattered plains of Mondstadt, then saw Dragonspine looming in the distance and felt compelled to climb to its peak. They didn't need some artificial reward to motivate them to go there. They didn't even need any promise of gameplay. They just saw a
100%.
huge, beautiful mountain dominating the horizon and felt that yearning for adventure deep.
So here's the problem, Saru. That was 1.1, and now we're in like 5.2, 5.3. And I don't remember anybody talking about something else that gave them the same whimsical feeling of seeing Dragonspine for the first time.
Within them. And if you try to climb it,
It's been 5 years since then, guys.
while you're underleveled, it's a legitimate challenge for so many reasons. The game feels like it has some actual bite to it. Some don't make it to the top on their first attempt, and they come back to conquer it later. Others do manage to reach the summit, and their victory is all the sweeter for the challenge. Many people who felt that call of adventure when they started the game have sadly lost that feeling over time. As the world becomes more familiar, it's natural for those moments to wear away. And sadly, Genshin's shallow difficulty curve at higher levels has blunted any challenge from the world since then. If I could bump up my world level so that Ruin Guards would once again become a daunting fight, I would do so in a heartbeat, and enjoyed the exploration all the more for it. But even without that challenge, Genshin's new regions can still spark that wanderlust in me. As long as that keeps happening, I'm going to keep coming back. But it's when that game changed several related interactions of that gameplay loop in a row that it really has me hooked. Even early on in the game, the parts which stood out to me were what I call ambient quests, where you follow a series of breadcrumbs hidden in the world, solving multiple puzzles and beating multiple battles until you eventually receive some larger reward at the end. One which sticks out in my memory is called the Chi of Yor, in which you solve sequence of puzzles to unlock your way into the hidden cave between Xingche Village and Chenyu Vale, then fight some waves of ruin guards blocking your way into a vault containing tons of rewards. This kind of gameplay is so satisfying as an exploration player. Even though every step along the way is obviously planned out in detail by the developers, it feels like you're discovering secrets for yourself, the exact feeling explorers crave. Hoyo have been building more and more of these into each passing region and getting better at designing them to feel natural. Despite its faults, which we'll get to in a second, Natlan has stood out to me as the best area in the game for this particular pattern. Inside the Sacred Mountain, for example, there are
You know what was one of my favorite exploration moments in gaming was when I was playing Wuthering Waves Renacida, and I was just exploring from like place to place and discovering like these very unique like one-off quests that just transport you to a whole new world in Wuthering Waves. Like when you go to the broken bridge and you find the big sexy mommy Echo and you go on a date with her and it plays you that beautiful fucking song that you only hear if you find that quest, and like little magical moments like that. Yeah, the Lorelei thing. I can't remember any other time besides Dragonspine that I felt that, or maybe even the Chasm or Onkonomiya was cool. Onkonomiya was actually pretty fucking cool, but I didn't get any of that in Sumeru at all. I mean, I tried. I think I explored Sumeru for like well over 30 hours, and everything just felt more of the same. There were some nice moments, but it didn't capture me, right? And I can't play a game for somebody else's enjoyment.
Many ancient dragon mechanisms either trapped or scattered in pieces across the landscape.
And then I'm just like, oh yeah, this looks really pretty. But then it's like, it's all flash, no substance. You know what I mean? Just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it's fun to explore. I want to feel like I earned something that by going there, rather than just being like, oh, I saw the pretty thing. It's like, okay, well, I didn't feel anything.
Rescuing or repairing each mech was another sequence of puzzles and challenges, with some combat thrown in as well, and provided both rewards and a spectacular traversal method at the end as you ride the dragon through the stunning landscape towards the next undiscovered area to explore. Cool. This is likely not a type of gameplay which appeals to everyone, especially those who are obsessed with combat, since each step along the way is fairly simple. But for me, the overarching experience is greater than the sum of its parts.
I can see how people might have really liked that. That actually seems awesome.
This gameplay loop is the reason I got hooked on Genshin in the first place, and they have leaned into it more and more. Sadly, I feel that they have fumbled some key parts of this in Nutland. The distribution is no longer quite so varied. There's an emphasis on greater friction between points of interest, and not in a good way. The region is deliberately designed to be annoying to traverse, which makes exploration feel much less enjoyable. They deliberately created this problem because, of course, they wanted to sell the solution.
I'm sorry. No matter who you are, if you are aware that your company is doing that, I really just think that should remove all good faith of you. Like, that should remove all good faith that you have. Like, genuinely, if you really feel that the developers are making the game feel worse so you have to spend money, I don't care who you are. If you are a self-respecting individual, you would quit on the fucking spot. Doesn't matter how much you like it. Doesn't matter you looking past it. It's about the fucking principle of them doing that. Absolutely not.
Long characters. They have always added characters with extra traversal mechanics. Venti's updraft, Kazuo has double jump, Yilan's zoomies, Shenyun's even bigger zoomies, and so on. While I do enjoy these characters, and the world traversal improvements built into the later regions often meant that the exploration was fun even without them, I still think it sucks when they lock traversal mechanics behind the gacha system. These characters add more variety to the exploration gameplay.
And you have to acknowledge, whether you love the game or you hate the game, Wuthering Waves' gadget system was one of the greatest things to be added to a gacha game, getting all those features on all of your favorite characters for free. So nice.
In ways which can feel really satisfying to use, but since many players will be unable to get them all, I can't help but see them as a negative to the game overall. In Nutland, they decided to dial this up to 11. Every character is focused on some traversal mechanic, which is supposed to make them feel fun to use when exploring, but the only way to make their skills feel significant is to make the world worse in many ways. If you pulled for those characters, you won't have noticed it as much, though there are still times when Nutland still feels frustrating to explore, and the traversal still feels like a step back from the level we got in Chenyu Vale. And if you don't have them, you'll have a miserable time. You're forced to use the...
I want to remind you that this is the person who's attempting to defend the game. But anybody hearing this right now would immediately think, yeah, I'm not downloading that. And you know I'm telling the truth. The only people who would accept this type of predatory, disgusting, corporate forward practices are people who are already too lost in the sauce of this fucking game.
The Saurians, which are unnecessarily slow and cumbersome, and are just a pain to use. Some areas have been a joy to explore in spite of this. Ochnapplan and the Sacred Mountain in particular. They are amongst the most visually stunning.
At least she acknowledges the issues. Oh yeah, guys, I fucking love this video. This might be one of the most fair videos of all time. This dude, Saru, is an amazing blessing to the gacha community. I greatly enjoy this person's content. This is an incredible video.
Stunning areas in the game, and did a fantastic job
and once again, I get it. This is 100% a video saying Genshin is really fucked up, but I accept it for what it is. I'm just not like that. I can understand if you're like that. I'm not like that, though, at all.
Exploration in particular, but that decision to make traversal so central to the region and then lock it behind either characters or clunky and inconvenient Saurians was bad in my opinion. I can only hope that future regions will not follow this path, and instead will have traversal mechanics which pick up where Chenyu Vale left off, and exploration chaining to match the best of what we've seen in the game so far. Hoya don't entirely have my trust on that, but I still have hope.
I know.
Another key thing which keeps me coming back.
Don't worry. Soon that hope will turn to cope, like it always does. Hoyoverse, turning hope into cope for 5 years.
Is the nostalgia I have for the game and the pure idyllic ambience created by the combination of the beautiful world and the...
And there's one thing that you can't deny, whether you like or hate Genshin, man, the music and the feels that some areas give you are, like, very emotional. They are. Like, I still remember Dawn Winery, even Mondstadt theme, even Liyue, you know, it's great. You know, it's made some very good emotional moments, but for me, that's not strong enough of a tie to keep me playing.
The stunning music. While Mondstadt's...
And don't get me wrong, I could go play Genshin and probably get like 6, 7, 8,000 viewers. But it's just not about the viewers to me, man. It's really not. It's never been about the views with me. I just need to do something that I enjoy that my audience also enjoys. And me trying to find that's very hard, but I am trying to do that in Big 2025.
Familiar green hills echo many other games. Hoyo often leaned into the fantastical when creating the rest of Tevat, and to this day, spending time in this world still feels like I'm exploring something out of a Ghibli film. I don't think I'll ever get bored of that. I know some feel that Genshin's world looks dated now, but for me, the art style they used is timeless, and each region can be stunning in its own unique way. And even those who dislike the game have to admit that it's a travesty that Hoyomics have never even been nominated for any awards for best score. Before Genshin, I would endlessly revisit my favorite open world games, not only replaying the story, but sometimes just existing in a different world for a while.
Sure. But I think you gotta understand, Saru, is that the music is like, it's good. For a gacha game, it's good. But for a real game, I'm sorry. It just doesn't compete. It really doesn't. I mean, Clair Obscure in the first 30 minutes has more memorable soundtracks than Genshin has after 5 years, and that's just the fucking truth.
Sometimes that's all you really need. While for many people, aesthetics and nostalgia don't contribute much to their enjoyment of a game, they matter to me and act as a multiplier to my enjoyment of the gameplay. Community is another key pillar which keeps me engaged with the game. A lot of my friends and my community still play the game, and while we spend less time messing around in co-op than we used to, every new update brings us together to discuss and share opinions and generally enjoy our shared interests together. While we have that same experience for other things too, even outside of gaming, it adds another layer of fun to keeping up with Genshin. Even when Hoyo make a decision I disagree with, the conversation it sparks acts as a bit of a consolation prize. And looking outside of that closer part of the community, it's undeniably welcome to have that shared experience to talk about both on Twitch and YouTube. I don't feel like I've been part of that discussion for long, but through sharing my thoughts about Genshin storytelling and some specific issues in Natlan in particular, I've had the joy of hearing many more perspectives on it than I ever could.
I mean, that's the reason why I don't ever stop talking about Genshin because it is very fun to talk about how they fuck up. I'm not gonna lie. It is a content train that keeps going. Like, man, when Hoyo is just, they're obsessed with fucking up. Somehow they find the path of the most resistance on every single update. It's fucking shocking.
Would have before. Many disagreed with my takes, but came to the conversation with an open mind and mutual respect, which led to interesting discussions, which deepened my appreciation for the game and made me want to keep coming back for more, even when I was feeling disappointed with the story. That's far from the experience many other content creators have had with the wider Genshin community. I sometimes wonder why that is. I still plan to cover much more than just a handful of games I've created videos about so far, but there's still so much I feel compelled to talk about when it comes to Genshin, and it's hard to imagine a world where it stops being a major part of my content anytime soon. Genshin's story is an important area that I have mixed feelings on. For the first couple of regions, I wasn't all that interested. I played because of the exploration instead. Inazuma felt like an interesting story with really bad storytelling, then Sumeru was a big step up and Fontaine was even better. Natlan had some positives early on, but all my good feelings towards it were kinda wiped out by the car crash that was Act 5. I've shared my thoughts on the general issues with Genshin storytelling in detail in the past. I always felt like it had great potential, but inconsistent execution. For me, those climactic moments in Sumeru and Fontaine, where everything they had been trying to do came together, were so good that I could more or less forgive the flaws elsewhere.
Is there a skip button in Genshin yet? Does that exist? Can you skip and summarize yet? Is that no? That's insane. With how much story there is, that's insane that you cannot skip.
I was hopeful they would keep improving until Natlan came along and let me down. That recent livestream where Hoyo acknowledged that their storytelling had been subpar so far was interesting to see, and the legitimately good stories in recent events have led me to hold out hope that they can still raise the bar.
That's what I'm saying. When people defend Genshin story writing in Natlan, they say, oh, it's so good. Guys, the developers themselves have admitted that it's bad. So no, it's not fucking good. Anybody who can take their fucking rose-tinted nostalgia glasses off will tell you that. It's a fucking drawn-out slog slap fest. It's fucking terrible.
If they fail to deliver on that promise, I would be disappointed, but not surprised. But either way, it's not the end of the world for me. If I want really good storytelling, I can always read a book, watch a film or TV, or just go play something else. Expedition 33 is up next as soon as I have the time.
Based, true and based and real. Easy clap, absolutely. Expedition 33 mentioned.
I wish Genshin would reach that level, but if it doesn't, it's not necessarily a deal breaker for me. I also tend to like games which provide an outlet for creativity, and Genshin does have some places where that's a possibility. For the more mainstream parts of the gameplay, I do enjoy coming up with new team compositions, sometimes using that rotation app my partner and I created to figure out ways to make characters work well together, though for the most part I prefer going off vibes rather than crafting something polished. There are other creative outlets in the game, like the teapot, virtual photography, or even the rhythm game for people who enjoy that minigame. While I enjoyed the teapot, its restrictions ended up being a little too irritating for me to keep at it.
The load limit, where if you put one pet in it, you can't do anything else, was the biggest piece of dog shit I've ever seen.
And sadly, Genshin's photo mode gives us too little control for me to get into it. And rhythm games are my kryptonite, so that one's a nope for me. It's also worth acknowledging that habit does play an important role in keeping me in the game, which has both positives and negatives. It can be a good thing to have a regular routine, and as long as you don't stress about missing...
I'm underneath the big impression that there's no such thing as all of these games genre I don't like. I don't think that's a way to do that. I believe that if a game is good, it can stand on its own regardless of the genre. For example, me, I'm not really too crazy about rhythm games, but I mean, Rock Band is just fucking awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like, even turn-based RPGs, they're all right, but like Expedition 33 just raises the fucking bar. Strategy games are whatever, but I mean, I still love Civilization, right? It just really depends. Like, I think there's always an outlier. Like, even country music. I'm not a fan of country music, but Lil Nas's shit I thought was pretty good.
Out on...
Or like, oh yeah, rap. I don't really give a fuck about rap, but like people like Post Malone and what's that one guy who goes, I ain't never hit a sad baby, 'cause I'm on my own. Yeah, Tommy Richmond.
Resin, or even forgetting to do dailies, the habit of logging in and spending a little time in the game each day ends up soothing overall. However, it's important to be conscious of the negatives. Continuing to play just because it's something you always do is not ideal, for example, so it's important to take a step back and think through whether it's a net positive overall, and consider taking a break if it no longer brings you joy. I did reach that point with the other Hoyo game I played, and I've been happier since I dropped it, but I'm still enjoying my time with Genshin for now. There are also a fair few aspects of the game which do keep people coming back, but which aren't really that important to me. Let's just quickly run through the ones I've seen most often. Competition is a big one, with people striving to either complete content in the fastest time possible or just grind their way to the top of the leaderboards for build strength in Akasha. I personally couldn't care less about either. Competition in general...
I'm just like not going to be doing that, bro. I will play the game for what the developers have made for me. I am no longer playing video games as self-imposed challenge that are unintended parts of the game because the developers themselves have dropped the ball. I am just not doing that.
Rarely captures my interest, and in a single-player game built on a combination of gacha for characters and endless RNG hell for artifacts, it's even less enticing. Another is the deeper lore. Many people are hooked on this, but personally, I could never get into it. I recognize that it has many interesting layers, but I just have no reason to care. If Hoyo were to integrate the lore more closely into the main stories, our conquests and character stories specifically, then perhaps that would change, but until then, it's not for me. I'll always appreciate the fascinating context that my lore-focused friends bring to any discussion about the story though, and I'm glad they get joy from diving in. Genshin's combat is loved by many, but at the same time, it's a key source of disappointment for others. I enjoy it quite a lot for what it is. While the mechanical gameplay can feel a little lightweight, it can be satisfying to reach an instinctive higher-level understanding of how characters will fit together to form cohesive and effective teams. There's a lot that I would change about it if I could, but there's also much to enjoy if you're not a hugely combat-focused player.
That's like one of the big things that I think is like blinding so many content creators. They say, oh man, I really like this game. Like for example, like Honkai Star Rail. Like people who partake in zero cycles, you got to understand that your version of reality of what Honkai Star Rail is so skewed. And oh my God, this cat wants me to pet him so bad. Because you sit there and you zero cycle all fucking day. And what you don't realize is that that is unintended content. And so if you actually play the game for what the developers have laid out for you, you will realize how barren of a wasteland Honkai Star Rail is. You do the story quest, you do a challenging game mode for 30 minutes every 2 weeks, and then you are left with nothing. Nobody else is out there being like, okay, well, now that I've done that, I can get back to zero cycling for 5 weeks. Nobody is doing that shit. Your perception of the game is illegitimate, it's fraudulent, and to be honest, that probably leads to a lot of people overrating the game because that's not how the game was meant to be played. It's the same thing with fucking, Wuthering Waves players. Yeah, I'm going to solo it with Dan Jin. It'll be epic. Like, your version of what the game is fraudulent. Nobody is doing that shit at all. Solo runs are dumb as shit. Just do what the game has laid out for you and then be fucking done with it. Because what you're doing and saying that the game is really good because of the self-imposed challenge that I've done, no one else is doing that. You're the one who's unemployed enough to actually try to do that. Everybody else is working a real job. and they say, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do the new reset for the tower, and then I'll get out of the game.
The endgame has done a nosedive since the start of Natland, with boss mechanics being noticeably more hostile and HP inflation much more significant, but that's such a tiny percentage of the actual time spent playing the game that it really feels like a storm in a teacup to me. Either way, if I want an exhilarating combat experience, I'm much more likely to go play something else. The urge to complete everything can be a powerful motivator to keep going for many people.
But can you tell other people how to play the game, though? No. Any way that you want to play the game is correct, but what the thing is that when you go to talk about the game state or review the game, just don't talk about these fake challenges that you put in the game, because these aren't what the devs added. This is what you did. Like, if someone hands you a sandwich and then you put hot sauce and salt and pepper on it, you wouldn't say, wow, you made a really good sandwich. You would say, wow, I made a really good sandwich, or I made this sandwich great, right? It's that you are adding that onto it, which is what makes it more enjoyable for you, right? But then if someone were to add me a sandwich that I didn't have to alter at all, I didn't have to take off a tomato, I didn't have to do nothing, I was like, wow, this was great. But yeah.
People, and I do have completionist tendencies. For example, anyone who has attempted the gambling achievement in Red Dead Redemption 2 will know just what it means that I completed 100% in that game.
I see your point, Tech. The game should be fun off the cuff, not us making the game fun because it's lacking. Yeah, absolutely. Like, no one should be praising Nintendo for making Super Mario 64 speedruns. Like, that's not what the company made. That's what the players made. Like, no one should ever say, yeah, dude, Nintendo is such a great company because they intentionally put beating Super Mario without ever jumping in their game. Like, they didn't do that. That's what the community did. And you can say the community makes the game great, but you can't say the developer or the update was great because of something that I myself imposed on myself. That's not how that works, and the developer should not be praised for that. The community should. And that's the big difference.
This did apply in Genshin for a while.
Because what Nintendo did is when people try to innovate off their game is they sue them off the face of the fucking earth.
But thanks to me burning out a little during Sumeru Desert expansion, coupled with Hoyo's absolutely awful system for tracking map completion percentages, I no longer feel compelled to complete everything in this game. For me, that feels much more healthy. I play the parts I enjoy up until I've had my fill, and then I'm done for the day. If I fall behind or miss out on things, I'm comfortable with that. I still love this world. I still love these characters.
Or like people will say, oh, dude, I love Skyrim so much. Bethesda did a great job. Meanwhile, you're playing with 2,000 mods on your game. It's like, brother, Bethesda didn't make that shit. The community made that shit. So why the fuck are you thanking Bethesda for that? They provided the bowl. You put your own damn food in it. They didn't make that shit.
Still get that idyllic sense of freedom when I run around the beautiful landscapes, solve puzzles, find secrets, and spend time just feeling like I'm wandering through a Studio Ghibli masterpiece. I get that many of the people who are most vocal about their disappointment with this game are that way because it used to make them feel like this. No game is perfect, and it's important to point out flaws, even if it's unlikely to gain enough traction to actually change anything. Being honest when talking about these things is always the right thing in the long run. It's also important to acknowledge that people who do still like a game you're disappointed.
Is it safe to say you just invalidated speedrun community's effort? Is it safe to say that you're fucking retarded if you just took that away from what I just said? I legit just said, don't thank the developers for making the speedrun community. Thank the community for making the speedrun community. How in the fuck are you that stupid? Jesus. You're just a little bit dumb. That's okay. That's okay. I don't think I'm him. I know I'm him. So that's why I'm here. And you're over there wherever the hell you are. It's okay. Sit back. Enjoy the show. Good God.
Are not wrong for doing so. They probably just have different perspectives. And different perspectives, if you give them the respect they deserve, make the world a much more interesting place. Until next time.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real, Saru. I think the things that you enjoy about this game are things that you made for yourself. I don't think you enjoy what the company put out there. But that's just my opinion. And I respect your opinion. However, Genshin is shit. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe.